Hello everyone, my name is Ashley McGinn. I'm a member of the AEC Digital Transformation team here at Pentagon Solutions, and in this short video I'm going to show you how to create a Plant 3D specification using the Spec and Catalog Editor. This is a very powerful tool which I'll demonstrate in this video. If I open one of the existing specs which come as default with Plant 3D projects, we can see in the top pane we have our spec sheet viewer, and in the lower pane we have the catalog viewer. We can toggle these panes to make one or the other bigger. The components within the spec viewer are grouped by type, as you can see here: elbows, flanges, gaskets, pipes, etc. We also have indicators for part use priority, which I'll talk about a bit later. In the lower pane we can see various catalogs that have been used to make up this spec. We can toggle between them and also filter out by part category, type, size. We can also filter by short description, material, pressure class, etc. There are also certain property overrides that can be applied to these parts, but we'll get to that a bit later on. In the top right of the Spec Editor, we can see that there are 3 tabs. One for Spec Editor, one for Branch Table Editor, and one for Catalog Editor. We're going to focus on Spec Editor, but it's important to note the level of customization that can be done for these specs and catalogs. Within the Catalog Editor, we can create new components, duplicate them, or delete components, as well as edit existing components. If we edit components in here, these updated components can be put into the spec after the fact. So in this video we're going to create a new spec from scratch and use components from an existing catalogue that is default within the Plant 3D content for 2022. So I'm going to create my spec. It's going to be a demonstration specification, and the file path that is noted here is going to be where the specification ultimately gets created, with the backup database files also being saved there. So I'll give it a short description so I know what it is. It'll be a demo A21 carbon steel specification, and it gives me the option to load in an initial catalogue. So I'm going to load in the ASME pipes and fittings catalogue for this particular spec. It's important to note that while you're editing these specs, you can toggle between catalogs that you're going to pick components from, but in this short video I'm only going to show you one option for this. So you can see in the top pane here it's quite different from the previous specification that we had loaded in. It's empty, so we need to populate this. In the lower pane, this is where I'm going to be selecting my components to add to the spec. So my first component is going to be piping components. So you can see that there are various types, but I want to filter mine by size. So I can go from 1 inch to 12 inch, but again, this isn't set in stone, and I can change my mind to go from any other sizes, 1/4 of an inch to 12 inch. So if I filter down by size, it will reduce the selection that we can find in the lower pane. I can change my selection by filtering by the long description, the short description, the end types, etc. So at the minute I do know which pipe type that I want, so I'm going to select it by long description. I don't need to see what other options are available because I know what I need. And you can see here, if I click on the size range, it lists a host of pipes that correspond to my size. So I'm just going to add that to my spec, and you can see it appearing in the upper pane. Next, I'm going to filter by fittings. Again, I'm going to just double check the size, and I want to filter by short description for this one. You can see within this catalogue there are various descriptions here. A lot of them are majority the same. It would just depend on how specific you need your spec to be. But at the minute I'm just looking for the elbow, the 90-degree short radius elbow. I also want a 90-degree long radius elbow and a 45-degree elbow as well. So I'm just going to filter by short description and add each of these in. You can see them appear in the top pane, and you can see that there is a little yellow warning icon in the part use priority field. This designates that I haven't confirmed in which priority that I need these fittings to be available in. We'll get to that in a second. If we double click on any of the parts or single click and then go to edit part, we'll be able to see the various sizes that are available, and we can pick and choose which sizes of that said part we want to actually have in our spec. We don't need to include them all. In fact, I can select these boxes and remove them from my spec. If I hit apply, we'll see that the odd sizes that I know I won't have are no longer there. Another handy addition here is that we can populate the likes of material fields. So I know it's going to be carbon steel, so I'll put in my abbreviation CS. I can copy this field, hold in the shift key and drag down, and then paste those values into the remaining fields, and it automatically updates the field. So if I hit apply and OK, that's my pipe spec up to date, and we can see here that the minimum size has changed because I've removed certain parts from that spec. Again, I'm going to do the same for each of my elbows. I know that I don't want the 1.5 inch, the 1 1/4 inch, the 2.5 inch, or the 3.5 inch sizes, so I'm going to select them and remove them from the spec. I'm also going to do the same again and amend the material, copy the value down to the rest of the fields, and apply and OK. So I'm going to keep doing this for each of my elbows because I know the specification that I'm using, these sizes they're more or less, not out of the box sizes, so they're not going to be applicable. I want something that I know on my spec sheet is available and is there, and I want to be able to route with. So we'll do the same again. And for the final time, for the 90-degree short radius elbow, we'll remove the sizes. As you can see here, if I toggle that on and off, it'll show you which parts I've marked as removed from spec. I'm just going to update my materials and hit OK. So I've chosen my sizes, but we still have this part use priority error. So when we go into it, if you click on each of the sizes, it lists the conflicts. So for each of these, I actually want to make my short radius elbow more of a priority than the 45-degree one. The long radius elbow is going to be my first choice. So what I have to do is go into each size and amend my list by using the arrows for priority on the right hand side. So if I move that up and do it for each entry that I know I need this value, or this part, to be more of a priority, I can go through each size and amend the list as needed. This is important when you know that certain parts can go together, certain parts can be connected, or your company has a preference of part to be used over another part. So what I'm going to do is select all of my size conflicts and mark them as resolved, and you can see here that the icon is updated to this green circle. That means that when I'm routing it in Plant 3D, creating a 3D model, it'll know which part to use as a priority. I can amend these afterwards and swap them out. We'll get to that a bit later, but at the minute it's good practice to make sure all of these are resolved. So I'm going to continue to add different parts to my spec So I want some fittings. I'm going to change the size out. I'm going to change it to a 1/2 inch to 12. And filter by short description. So we're going to add in some T's here. And the T that I am after, I can select and apply property overrides for material. This will eliminate the need to go in after I've added to the spec and amend each of the sizes, or the materials individually. I can do it while I'm adding them to the spec, so I don't need to go into that alternative table. So if I click on this T and add to spec with my apply property overrides to part selection ticked, go into my edit part, we can see that the material and the material code have been populated already, because I knew that's what I needed my T to be. So again, it's sort of less time consuming to do it prior to adding it to the spec with your property overrides. It's a very useful tool. So again, I'm just going to filter by short description and add in a reducer. This is more or less me just building out the spec with various parts that a typical spec would have. Reducers, T's, flanges. I'm going to add this flange, and I'm actually going to filter it by facing and pressure class, because these are all options that I can effectively decide which part I want to be in. So it's narrowed it down to 1. I'm going to add that straight to my spec. Now I'm going to add some socklets. I'll filter by short description here. I want my pressure class to actually be 3000 for this one, so it'll mean there's only 2 options here. So I'm just going to add this to the spec. And you can see when I'm adding various parts to the spec, it's automatically grouping them and listing them in a way that's easy to read. And the last thing I'll add here is a bolt set and also a gasket. With regards to adding parts from a catalogue, you can select to add multiple parts at the same time. Now if I filter by pressure class, we can see there are 4 parts here. I'm going to select all of these and add them to the spec. So I can just do that by clicking on one, holding in the control button and continuing to click on the rest. So I've added that to the spec. I'm going to add a gasket here, and that'll be my spec complete. So if we filter our short description to the gaskets, I'm just going to pick 2 of these that I know are applicable. However, there are various gaskets with various facings and pressure classes, as you can see here. Again, part use priority is an issue, but I know which order I need them to be. The 1/16 inch is going to be priority, so I'll just mark them all as resolved. And don't forget, it is important to save your specs as you go. I am going to go into Plant 3D here. You can see in a project, I don't have this spec listed, so when I've created a new spec, I need to copy the specs to my project. So what I'm going to do here is go into my C drive in my plant content folder where I saved my spec initially. I'm going to select the PSPX file and hit OK. And yeah, we can see it listed here, my demonstration spec. So I'm going to create a new Plant 3D drawing just so we can see the spec in action. We'll call it demo and we'll hit OK. So I'm just going to go up here, change my 3D workspace. and I'm going to select my demonstrator spec. I'm going to keep the size at 1 inch, and I'm just going to route the pipe and create a simple bend. Now if you remember our part use priority for our elbows, we can see here if I select the elbow and go to the drop down, our 90-degree elbows are listed here, and I can filter or navigate between them. So it's working as expected. And that, in a simple context, is how we create a basic spec and add it to our Plant 3D project. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe to be kept up to date with future videos. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter.